Good morning, members of the MAG Public Safety Answering Point Managers Group. This meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card located on the information table in the hallway and give it to MAG staff. If you have parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the information table in the hallway. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to today's meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
I will go through the list of members. When I call your name, please indicate you are present for the record. AMR Rural Metro, Ian Walter. Apache Junction, Lisa M. Nizer. Arizona DPS, Kara Nelson.
Patty Simpson.
ASU, Trish Price.
Trish Price is present.
Avondale, Angela Destin. Thank you. Buckeye, Jim Totora.
Jim's here.
Stephanie Heinzelman, Chandler PD.
Present.
City of Maricopa, Linda Smith. Fort McDowell, Yavapai Nation, Stephanie Beebe. Gilbert PD, Kim Weber.
Present.
Glendale PD, Loretta Hadlock.
Present.
Goodyear PD, Shauna Henry. David Demers, Luke Air Force Base. Jim Stillwell, MCSO.
Good morning, present.
Mesa Fire Department, Nicole York.
Present.
Mesa PD, Matt Omer.
Matt Omer, present.
Paradise Valley, Heather Beckwith.
Present.
Peoria PD, Brittany Brunet.
Present.
Phoenix Fire Department, Chief Gray.
Rain Gray's present.
Thank you, Chief. Phoenix PD, Dan McNamee. Salt River Maricopa Indian Community Police.
Dave Martin, present.
Scottsdale, Karen Sutherland.
Present.
Surprise PD, Domla Fennessy.
Present.
Tempe PD, Tanya Logan.
Present.
Tolleson PD, Amanda Howard.
Present.
Wickenburg PD, Aaron Hadley. And Ms. Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, our next item on the agenda will be called to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. I have received any to speak cards? No request to speak cards for this agenda item. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website 1 hour prior to the meeting. We have not received any written comments for this item.
Brittany, we did get a message that Apache Junction Lisa is actually on the phone, that she's having some mic issues, but she is present as well.
Okay.
And Brittany, Shauna Henry's here now too.
Thank you, Shauna. Okay, we'll move to agenda item number 3, which will be the approval of the October 20th, 2022 meeting minutes. Does any member of the PSAP managers group have any questions or comments on the minutes? Prior to approval of this item, do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on this item? I have received no request to speak cards for this item. Staff, have we received any written comments for these items?
Chair, we have no public comments have been received for this item or any other item on the agenda.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Jim Stillwell, MCSO, so motioned.
Second.
Was that second? Okay. I have Jim Stillwell. We have a motion from Jim Stillwell for MCSO and a second from Tanya Logan with Tempe PD. And I have a voice vote of those in the room. For all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually?
Thank you. Apache Junction, Lisa.
I'm here, Lisa, Apache Junction. Aye.
Aye, thank you. Trish Price, ASU.
Trish Price, aye.
Shauna Henry Goodyear.
Shauna Henry, aye.
Matt Ulmer, Mesa PD.
Matt Omer, aye.
Heather Beckwith, Paradise Valley.
Heather Beckwith, aye.
And those are our voting members on the phone.
Thank you. We'll proceed to agenda item number 4. The next agenda item will be the administrator report from Ms. Graber, 911 administrator, who will provide this report.
Chair, excuse me, if we could go back to the the virtual vote. Dan McNamee is on the line. Dan, how do you vote?
Dan, are you on the phone?
All right, we'll take that as an abstain then.
Can you hear me yet?
Dan, is that you?
Yeah, that's me. I apologize. I joined late and I couldn't find unmute. I vote aye.
Okay, we're good. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for the administrative report. We'll go over my summary. Oh, that line, put it right in the middle. Okay, Sands year to date, 134. We're still using it. It's going very good. Nothing new to report on that. Text to 911, we're continue to grow. Thanks to MCSO for giving us more business. The monthly average is up to 944 for this year. Year to date is 10,000. Very much. That's a record. And we saw the month ago, the previous year was 8,239. So a lot of that has to do with, is it ADT, Mr. Stillwell, that's doing that are doing alarms through text 911. So this, and to my knowledge, you're the only, by looking at it, you're the only agency that's participating in that.
Yes.
Nobody else has a spike. And basically that's, it's a short report, but those are the two items I had. Chair.
Can I just ask Jim to report on how it's going?
Sure.
Do you mind?
I would say it's going well. The only issue that we've had has been two issues actually. One, some misrouted text messages. So even though the shape files that we had showed the addresses in our jurisdiction, the shape files that the Intrado had did not. And so a few agencies received alarms via text when they weren't supposed to. They should have come to us. I believe they were all transferred to me, but there could be a possibility that the receiving agency didn't understand that it was supposed to be ours and told the alarm company via text to call them. The other issue that we've seen is that the Comtech over-the-top solution does not recognize the carrier return. So whenever ADT sends a message and they hit enter to drop to a new line, the Comtech solution is not recognizing that as a new line. So instead of having the alarm received line by line, we're getting it as one giant paragraph of text. So it makes it a little bit difficult to look at, but.
So did Comtech say that that would resolve when it becomes integrated?
Yes, it would be. It is resolved and workable in a integrated solution. Intrado has said that they've created tickets with Comtech to correct it because it is an issue on the Comtech side. However, they have not had any movement.
Yeah.
They had requested PSAPs to reach out and create a ticket with Comtech because they feel that the PSAPs will get a better response than what Intrado is.
Thank you.
I just ask one more question about workflow. So when the text comes in, they can't copy and paste that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So they have to retype whatever is coming in. Do the dispatchers feel like that's still a benefit to them to take them over text?
I've heard both sides of that. Some of them like it, some of them don't. It would be a lot easier to copy paste.
So if it's not coming in any format that can be copied, that's a problem anyway. I wonder if when it becomes integrated, if there is any way that it could go in as a form that could kind of drop like an NELE drop if technology is at that point.
I think that that'd be possible if the code was written for that or available.
Because there's obviously a formatting that drops the NELE into our CAD systems and things like that. So I wonder if something like that could be reverse engineered and drop those directly in like an NELE dump. That might be something we should explore.
Yes, I agree. I think that would make things a lot easier.
Okay, thank you.
One of the big things that the dispatchers do like is the fact that there's less chance for confusion. We have a lot of interesting pronunciations here in Arizona, and a lot of these alarm company operators aren't in Arizona. So the way they try and pronounce something, there's sometimes a little bit of miscommunication there. So it makes it a lot easier by just seeing a word instead of hearing somebody say something.
Thank you, Ms. Graber. Do we have any questions or comments from the membership? Mr. Stillwell?
Just one question for Liz. Liz, I know previously you had mentioned that there's the possibility of looking at replacing the product that we're using for Sens. Is that still in the works? Or is there any movement on that?
We would be upgrading it. Are you wanting to look at a whole different platform?
No, I was just, I'm just,
Yeah.
yeah, just really the update as to whether we were keeping the same platform and updating or if we were moving
Yeah, so
platforms.
currently we're with Vesta Alert. No, Vesta Alert, is that right, Dave? Vesta Alert, I had it right. And so there's an upgraded version that we would use for that, and it would make the necessity of SIP trunks to go away. So that's an exciting thing. So it will, I don't know how much of a difference it will look, but with the emerging technology group can look at it and then look at, how they, if they want it changed or how to move forward past that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll proceed to agenda item number 5. This will be the discussion on the budget working group on 911 funding and the state 911 grant. Damala Tennessee will lead this discussion.
Good morning, everybody. So our group was able to get together twice in November. The first meeting was just to establish what the working group was going to look like and what our vision would be. After some discussion, basically we realized that we previously had likely relied too heavily on some very specific people to be the subject matter experts in the budgeting area. And so part of what we wanted to do was really peel back that onion, as Brittany had said, and we want to really dive deep into the understanding. That's going to take an in-person meeting that we have planned for next week. And so we wanted to bring to the table that if you guys have questions that you would like us to ask, things we want to learn more about, so that we can then bring that back to the collective group, please make sure that you shoot me an email between now and the 13th so that we can do that. And then Liz was able to give us an overview of what the workflow looks like. There were some things that she's going to tweak on that chart and then share it with us again. And then once we have that finalized, we'll make sure that we bring it back to the group so that you guys are all aware of what that process looks like as well. That second meeting, like I said, is going to be a real in-dive depth of what we have. But the meeting we had 2 weeks ago, we were able to get some insight and request some explanation, some clarification on what Liz is going to present to us today. And so hopefully that will make some more sense for everybody, and then may even help you guys know what kind of questions you're looking to ask going forward. And that's it.
So thank you, Damala. So the spreadsheet that we're using at work and what I showed to the budget working group is a massive detailed spreadsheet. This is only represents 4 columns from it, because it's more of as we get an invoice, we log it in when it's paid, along with data around it. We have the purchase order, everything associated with it, and what category. So if you remember on the state budget or the state grant, they have things categorized there. Back in the day, they had everything wireline. Before wireless came along, everything was wireline. And then when wireless came along, everything fell under wireline except the wireless specific charges. And then it gets muddier with NG 911. Well, wireline's going away. So we're going to have to retitle some of this stuff to make it more current on how we model that we use. So wireline, wireless, all of that. NG 911 is even going away because it's no longer next generation. It's this generation, right? So what we do is we try to organize the budget pretty much well like the grant, so that they're similar. So when you're looking at one, you can see it in the other one, and they're corresponding together. And so this is a living document that Robin, our 911 administrator, or sorry, Robin, you're the new 911 administrator. that Robin, our administrative assistant, and I look at and take care of. And so I've got it. I try to get what I felt like would be the best for, without getting into invoice numbers and purchase order numbers, but to give you an idea of the value of what it is. Because I think one of the things we want to do is not overwhelm you with stuff that's going to lose your attention, but give you specific that is going to give you what you want. So this is going to be a learning process for the working group and us to say, okay, yeah, give us this. We want to understand that. The working group is looking at how the sausage is made, but I don't know if we want to take that long of a meeting in every time to go over here. So what's the value that PSAP managers want? So when we do this budget, when we set up for fiscal year 2024, and what we did for 23 is we put in all the line items that were approved in the grant. So if you look at the column that's written in blue, that's everything for the monthly contracts that we do, that we were approved for the grant. And if you look at the far right, you can see all the companies that we do business with. Allstream, Cox, AT&T, Saddleback, Century, AT&T, all sorts of little mom and pop wireline and fiber connections and regular ILEX, CLEX. What will happen is after we go to the NG 911 platform is a lot of those charges will go away. For example, if you look at the one for AT&T, it looks like it's the fifth one down. For the actual is $960,000 and we have 1.175 million set aside. That's for wireline. You see how much that's, and that's drastically less than what we have been paying over the years. That one will go away hopefully in the next couple months. But a lot of these will drop off by the end of the year. And I have adjusted the numbers to meet accordingly so we can reallocate the money in our budget amendments. So then on the, so the in the black, the actuals are what we've spent so far to date. And then we keep, I like to be able to see what we have available in the funds left over. And like Cineverse, we've got 70 cents down near the bottom. That is the platform that we decommissioned on September 30th. And in what was budgeted for that year, there's 70 cents left. So that's good. But we don't want you to look, we don't want the working group to look at what can we reallocate on monthlies, because we don't know till the very end if there's overages, if there's monies left over on the table, because we have to pay that monthly. So we kind of guesstimate, but we try to budget within that. So it might be a few $100s on the table, but we'll take a look at it as it gets closer. And with the working group having their eyes on this, we'll be able to guesstimate hopefully that we can do. So that's contractual. Any questions on this portion? Because there's 3 pages of it. We're good?
Yes. Karen from Scottsdale.
Mhm.
So what we should be seeing is for these contractual payments, do they vary on each one of these, or are those pretty stable month to month payments that we're counting up here?
They vary just because of the nature of telecom. I don't know if it's universal fund changes or what in their calculations change. That some of them are always the same, like MTE is always the same, and the smaller ones, but the CenturyLink, the fiber ones, all of those, they always kind of vary because of taxes and telecom fees and things like that we don't control. But
Okay.
it's not a huge variance like $200 worth. It's just, maybe 100 and less.
Okay, because so we should be up through the end of November on this then, right? With the black column.
Some of them haven't, their billing cycles are all different. So some of them bill at the beginning, which we can capture, and some bill at the end, and they don't mail it out. So we're always playing the guessing game of when we get them. So we get them from the first of the month, sometimes into the first part of the next month on their November bills.
So, and I'm not asking because I want to reallocate funds, but just to understand, for the, like the very top one, all stream, is only about a quarter of the way through the budget of 250,000. We still have 186,000 in the budget for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Is that something that we expect that we're going to get to the 250, or are we only really looking at about 150 that that budget item actually is going to take up if we're about 40 or so % through the budget right now?
So what that represents is additional coverage for the new, let's see, well, maybe not. Let's see, for the Phoenix, some of that has built in for when they were going to be moving Phoenix and Wickenburg. So that might be able to be adjusted, but I wouldn't even consider looking at it till maybe March, till we have a better grip of how the rest of the year is going. But that one could be potential. The other one that could go up and down is the AT&T 1.7 million. We have 214 left on there. And we might have to increase that if there is any issues on not disconnecting them. We have put in a disconnection notice with AT&T, not AT&T, with CenturyLink. All of the smaller wireline companies like MTE, Alluvion, the AT&T bill up there, those tabletop, those will be canceled through the next gen platform. But we put in a notice on AT&T, CenturyLink, and so those have to have a 60-day, and hopefully we'll be able to close that. But as we discussed further on today, there might be a question mark. So we'll get a better understanding if we need to add monies to any of those, or if we are going to get some back.
Thank you.
Okay, so those are the contractuals. Let's go to the next one. This is PSAP operations. So like I said, they called it wireline before, and does not represent what you guys do. So we did it under anything that has to do with keeping you up, nothing to do with the network or the contractuals, but it has to do with upgrades. So you look in there, we have Luke Air Force Base, Phoenix PD, Avondale, ASU, and GMR all. AMR changed their name to GMR, just FYI. Those are the upgrades, and in those numbers include the CPE equipment from the quotes, along with the network components needed to, when you buy, that we don't get through the vendor, that like a switch, a router, things of that nature. And so none of those have been purchased. If you'll also notice, there's no actuals because we have a budget amendment that the state is still looking at. And as soon as we get that approval, then we'll start ordering the equipment. Mesa had 3 additional positions installed. And so we were able to, so that 4,000 on Mesa is good. Gilbert PD has a logging recorder and 3 additional positions. I was contacting a guy named Howard. Kim, does that sound familiar? Howard? No, Howard from the town of Gilbert reached out, reference setting up the invoice, and I asked him if we could combine them. So we're working through that. So those don't have any hits. And then we have our annual 911 software. Each of your, unless you have been upgraded in the last year or so, you are on an annual software update payment, and that also includes MIS and any service that you get from your vendor. So those are represented in that cost. And as we go through, Robin gets the invoices from them. They have to match what the detail that is in the contract. So they can't add anything that's a new part number or anything that's different than what's stated in the contract. Because if they do, we have to kick it back. The quote has to match the contract for us to do a purchase order on it. The invoice has to match what's on the contract. They're very, so we do a lot of back and forth on a lot of ordering equipment off of contracts to make sure that it's matching. And so a lot of times they'll put a new product number, or they'll calculate, change the price without changing the contract. And you can't do that in our procurement system. So we struggle with that, but we have set aside for the annual support payments of $404,700. Project peripherals. Now you'll see where it's in red, because in our exuberance, we accidentally ordered too many monitors. And so we are $5,057.71 in the red on that. So we can reallocate that because they are project related to, if there's any monies left over in above with Luke, Phoenix, Avondale, ASU, and GMR, that we can offset that, because because Nate bought monitors for not only the MAP, but for the CPE. We get a savings of $200. Was it 200 or 250? A little over $200 cheaper when we order the monitors. So good idea, but we didn't change the budget to match that, to offset that. So we'll have to, the working group and us will have to figure that out. Personnel, this is a question I have, and the state has always had us lump personnel together. But would it be easier if it was broken out into disciplines, as it were, so that the maintenance guys, which would be the project and Corey, would all be under one, the networking guys, GIS, and then administrative? That's something that the working group is looking at to see if we need to break it out. I got to get the city of Phoenix to give it to me. They don't give it to me broken out into disciplines that they don't know. They just see them as employees. And then just other support specifically for maintenance, or what everything else are spares. So you can see our budget for PSAP operations is $6.4 million. What we have spent and what we have a lot of it left, but we have not touched any projects. So as we get closer to get those things ordered, then we'll have a better idea of what's been encumbered and what we might have overages on.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The Mesa and Gilbert positions and logging recorder, that is for this current fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay.
This is fiscal year 2023, I'm sorry.
Right.
Okay.
That's what we're in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of these installs are in this fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And the last one? Nope.
Liz, question on that real quick. And please correct me if I'm misunderstanding. I see 3 positions for Mesa and 3 positions for Gilbert. Is the almost $12,000 price difference between 3 positions at each agency, is that because of different vendors, or?
Yeah, it's the cost between the 2 vendors.
Okay. Which is the cheaper? Gilbert is,
Mesa's. They're in Toronto.
That's what I'm saying.
Motorola. No, they're both of them. I don't know why there's a price difference. Did we have technicians out on yours? Because Mesa, we did the install.
I need to make a clarification. Our 3 positions, that was not this fiscal year. That was from fiscal
Right.
year.
Yeah, and we had the state, we pushed it over into fiscal year 23.
But that's still pending the amendment approval.
Right.
As far as the price difference, I can't tell you why.
We can look at it. It could be that we had to install charges, that they had a technician help us on that.
We did had a technician at Gilbert too.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. We did
Yeah.
Mesa's, but we might have outsourced yours.
Well, Liz, got a question as well on the amendment. I remember Tempe, myself, Glendale and Scottsdale also put in for the additional features that were coming in, those upgrades or the equipment. Is that included on 23 or does it go to 24?
No,
Because
that's
we
what-
had to submit those by a certain time. I remember that.
right. No, so we're still waiting on this one to be done because when they do an amendment, it locks it in. I can't do another amendment until this gets approved. And then I can go back and do another one.
I thought that's why those letters had to be in as soon as they were, because they had to go into this amendment time. Isn't that what you
Not
understood?
this
Tanya?
one, it would be the next one. None of those have been sent yet, as they'll be the next amendment.
Okay.
Okay, page 3. And this is the 911 network. So this has everything to do with the call handling itself with our selective routers. And this also includes some cost for purchases we need to make for NG 911, the core services project. And it's going to be GIS as well. So the things that we need to buy to upgrade on, that we needed to upgrade, the things that we needed to refresh, licenses, and then support all come out of those columns. So at the and then GIS, we have a Esri license that we pay for every year as part of the city of Phoenix. We have an enterprise license that has to do with mapping. Esri is like the mothership of all mapping globally. So most agencies, does Esri have a competition? No, not really. They're the Microsoft of the world anyway. So the city of Phoenix buys a massive enterprise license, and then they carve out which everybody's portion is. So we budget a $50,000 out of a multi-million-dollar invoice. We pay $50,000 for it. So as soon as we get that process, then we'll know how much our portion was. So though at the very bottom, you see our grand total. We've spent 3.2. We have 9.9 and we have 6.7 left on the table. So this is something that Dalmala and her group will help us look at. And as we look at it each month and get a better idea as invoices and we can make purchases come through, then we can start seeing where we can reallocate monies for things that we need. Questions?
I have one clarification. Just for the record, the 3 consoles for Gilbert, that was actually fiscal year 21. So 2 years ago.
It was fiscal year 22. I'm positive of that.
I just have my invoice up right here. We
Well,
installed in March of
yeah.
21.
You purchased them and then they were approved in fiscal year 2022. And we can take this offline and I can show you the documents of the approval from the state and everything that goes with that.
Okay.
Because unlike Mesa, you bought yours before the state approved it. Mesa waited until the state approved it. And then that's why it was handled a little bit differently, because normally it would be that we purchase them on the behalf. Right?
Right, but we were told we were denied. That's why we went ahead with a self-funding. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we'll take it offline, Kim, because I want to make sure you're really clear on how that exactly occurred.
Thanks for that. And then just your earlier statement just reminded me, I don't know who a Howard is. We don't have a Howard in our budget department, but we did have a phishing incident that involved one of our employees with the first name Howard. So I'm
so-
afraid you may want to double check your account.
Well, whatever he sent, he didn't send me an invoice. So I replied back to him, you need to send me an invoice.
Yeah, that was a phishing attempt.
All right, so would you send me the name of, is Howard with budget?
No, my budget department has been given your contact quite a few months ago. So I'll follow up with them what they want to do.
Okay, is there any chance you can just send me the contact?
I'll follow up with them.
I see. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Liz, just so that we have it on our radar, Tanya and myself and probably Karen, can you let me know when you send that amendment in?
You
Or
bet.
when you sent it in? Did you already send it in?
No,
Okay.
because I can't get into the portal when there's a pending amendment.
Okay. So what was the urgency on sending the memo? I thought, and that was our whole thing. We thought that we would be getting that equipment like soon. And I
Yeah.
know she's shaking her head yes as well. So that's kind of my question right there.
So we need the official, so I can get quotes, which I've done. And then we put it into the amendment. So it's just not, you gave me the thing and then we start buying it. There's still a process of getting the quotes, make sure they're correct, and then get them entered as an amendment. And maybe that's the portion you're missing. So just writing me a letter doesn't allow me to do a purchase order immediately. Writing me a letter says, you officially want this, then I'm able to go out to the vendor and say, I need a quote for Tempe, Glendale, Scottsdale, and Mesa. Actually asked for one too. And once I get the quotes, and then I put it to the state as an amendment with the quotes. And then they have to approve it.
So is there a timeline for this amendment?
I have no control over when the state's going to approve that amendment. I reached out to him today, and they said they'd let me know. I think with the changes with the state on our contacts, that might have caused some delay.
So they really don't have an amendment for our equipment
No.
that we requested.
No, because I can't enter an amendment because the system's locked up.
Okay.
Okay.
And Loretta, did I give you an installation date?
No, because we had actually already installed. And then I know we had one we were going to try to get it done before Super Bowl. So that's why I'm questioning it so much. And
Because I know
it's something that I discussed with Intergov, and then I also discussed with my partner, my peer, that, over the comm center, and with the upgrades that they just recently done, I had to ask her if there was any changes or anything like that. And we had discussed that as well, but now I'm kind of.
Yeah, so the 7.9 Vesta upgrades have nothing to do with this. That's for NG 911. These are add-ons that you've requested. And I thought I made that pretty clear to your Intergov that we would get you to the 7.9, which we were told was what you needed to be for next gen.
Well, we had questioned why we didn't receive the upgraded equipment. And it's probably not our fault because we went early. We transitioned early to Vesta, but I mean, that was our question, why we didn't obtain that equipment when it's now available for anybody else who actually gets the equipment. So it doesn't make any sense.
Well, if you remember, Loretta, that the state didn't let us know that they were allowing us to buy that equipment until you were already purchased and delivered. So Scottsdale project is the first one that came into question, and you were already cut over. So you were already approved for an amount. We had already been in the it already had been done. Doesn't mean it can't be added in. It just wasn't in the original purchase because we didn't know at the time at the original purchase, at the purchase order we cut, that it was approved.
All right.
I have a question. I'm just curious, is there a process or a way that you can share these amendments when they're submitted so we know what is being sent and waiting on the state to approve?
Sure. They use the e-civis portal and it's online. So that's how they manage it. And if for example, I did the things in the amendment that I've been waiting on is the transfer of the 1.67% over to personnel costs. That still hasn't been done. And there's been several things that are tied up into it, just not your requests. Okay.
Okay, this item is on the agenda for this item is on the agenda for information, discussion, and possible action. We will proceed to agenda item number 6. The next agenda item is a discussion on 911 alternate routing needed on a regional level as part of the NG 911 Core Services Project. Vice Chair Karen Sutherland will lead this discussion.
So the NG 911 for Maricopa region is still on hold. Liz, you don't have any update on that right now, do you? On a date that it's coming in, because it's obviously not coming in tomorrow.
Right, right. You want me to go ahead and jump in on that? Because it might help.
If you have information to add that I don't have, then go ahead.
Well, this is only as of Monday. So Monday, we were notified by the state that the NG 911 Core Services Project was put on hold for the Maricopa region. And that came from the Director Tobin's office. So they are meeting next week, they being our city manager and fire chief with Director Tobin to discuss further on why that's been put on hold. So how this affects everything, I have no idea until we have that meeting. I don't know why, no details other than it's been put on hold.
So that will be the end of the update then until we hear more.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the membership on this?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Is there a working group or anything going on underneath the Maricopa region, outside of the Maricopa region team, associated with the needs or the wants in terms of alternate routing?
You're talking other than the team, the working group that we have in this group? Or are you talking as part of this?
Right. I guess I'd like to make myself available to discuss the capabilities of what can be done in the alternate routing, if there's any meetings or anything going on.
We do have meetings. In fact, there's one today at 2:00. And you're welcome to join it. I'll forward you the invite.
Is there any technical contacts on there?
In the meetings we have Greg Denton from the ADOA who generally joins us. He speaks to what things are happening around the state and what they're learning as a part of the NG 911 implementation around the state. We have put together a lot of thoughts as far as policy routing goes. We've put together some preliminary policies. I think you may have even looked at a couple of them that we had put on there. And we were hoping that you could join a meeting and listen to what we're hoping can happen once we have the implementation in place.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'm just a bit confused as to where the policy is being shaped if there's not an understanding of the capability of what can be done. Greg's not a technical contact. The state office doesn't really have a technical contact. There would have to be someone from our group or contact participating.
Stephen
This participates.
Yeah, me and Stephen.
Oh, Stephen Asher.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the questions that we have was trying to vet out, and I believe I briefed you on this, is the fact that for Super Bowl, the question was, they can reroute according to their calls, but can the context system sense what calls are in queue for either Viper or Vesta and reroute according to what the queue thresholds are set at, right?
Right. We had written up a proposal that we would like to put into place if there was a mass casualty incident during the Super Bowl or waste management. It was specific in this particular case for East Valley agencies to be able to share calls. Tempe, Salt River, myself, Chandler talked about it, put it in writing, and we can get that over to you. I know that there was discussion between Liz and I as to whether that was going to be a possibility.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to having you join the group.
Okay, and it's my mistake. I apologize for being up, maybe too forward on that. I was not aware of the intersection of what you were reporting on versus
Yeah.
what I've received from Liz. So
Yeah, and Karen's right. It wasn't it wasn't from the working group. It was from the East Valley wanting to prepare for it. And so the question that we're still not sure that it's is possible is, can they reroute according to the queues and that the CPE equipment is doing, or do they do it by the queues of how many calls are being served to that piece?
yeah, the short answer that there's no next gen product that would know if the calls are queuing. If you went from Solacom, because our equipment is Solacom on the ESRPs, into Solacom call handling, but no equipment that we have deployed, Vesta nor the Viper product gives any feedback as to if calls are queuing. So it would be based on how many calls were directed at them.
So it won't know that you got 10 calls and 5 of them are in queue and 5 of them are with an operator. All they know is that you got 10 calls. So you'd have to base your decisions on how many calls you are served, whether they're being handled or in queue. It doesn't matter to Comtech.
So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I want to keep exploring this. The training materials that we got at the beginning of all of this regarding policy routing and how we could route sort of indicated that any mathematical solution that we can come up with is potentially doable. Now, are they all doable today? I'm not sure. But that's why we sat down and put together ideas for how we could share some of the grief with each other if we have to. This one, like I said, was done in the East Valley, but if we can, once we hone that down, we'll share it so that it can be something that other areas can put together with their partners as well. But I'd like to keep looking into this because it looked like the training materials gave a lot of different ideas and solutions that we could use. And so I just want to make sure that something is impossible before I throw it out the window.
And we can, even though that we've been put on pause, it doesn't mean we can't have those discussions still. So we can vet that out, Karen, when that's not on pause.
What's most important is that the contact Stephen Asherkoff,
Yeah.
someone that can represent the actual capabilities of their solution, is giving you guys input. That's the most important part. Thank you.
Yes, they're on every meeting that we have.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the membership on this topic? Okay, we'll proceed to agenda item number 7. The next item is a discussion on mass casualty and patient reunification. Vice Chair Sutherland and I will lead this discussion. I'll let you.
Okay. Brittany and I received a call from the Tempe Fire Department in November. And they are working with nearby agencies, probably all the agencies in the county themselves, also to plan for mass casualty incidents. And the conversation is almost ties in with some of this NG 911 conversation that we've been having as well. They're coming at it from a little bit different point of view. They're going to have trainings where their partners will practice going out to, they'll have a group that will go to the hospitals. Say there's a mass casualty incident and patients are unknown that are getting brought into the hospitals. So they'll have a group that goes out and actually takes pictures, has some sort of identification that they put on these folks, and then puts that out to all of the different agencies. And if there's missing people that match that description, we can possibly get them reunified with families. They're coming up with a phone number that could be a regional number, so that if we start getting calls from families that are looking for their loved ones, that they would have a manned phone position that would be answering that and we would all be reporting in. It's described a little bit like the current ICS plans that we have, where everybody sort of reports into someone else, and then each different area of the mass casualty will have somebody heading it, and they're trying to work through every single thing that they can do. A lot of their focus is on reunification with family and friends and how that will happen. So we'll be hearing a little bit more about that as they continue with their plans. But that led them into, they contacted us because they recognized that if a mass casualty incident happens, not only is the affected PSAP going to be completely overrun with calls, but probably most of the other PSAPs in the valley are too. And so we need some way of managing that chaos. And so that is probably going to be another thing. And I don't know now, since we're getting news that we don't know when we'll have NG 911 in the region, if it's even going to be something that we can talk about before Super Bowl. We might not have the time at this point to have it in place and have any kind of a plan, but they were looking for us to come up with some policy routing solutions. They didn't ask for it in those terms, but that's what they wanted, right? They're looking for, how can we get information to the right places, maybe get groups of, say, tactical dispatchers or that type that could gather and take those calls. And some of those things could be possible in an NG 911 situation if we can, geofence an area and have those sent to specific people. But I'm going to hand it to you in case I missed something of real importance here, but those were the two things that really stuck out to me, were the reunification and how they're going to do that. And then coming to us to ask for help to develop a plan for how our agencies can all respond if something like that happened in the 911 centers, and how we can pull this together and possibly control this chaos within a plan that we already have in our department, so that we're not trying to figure it out on the fly.
I think Karen touched a lot on the majority of it, but I think as Andrea, when she spoke with us, I think that a lot of it is a lot preliminary conversations. She's going to get back with us in a couple of weeks and circle back. But her whole goal talking with Karen and I was for the hope for Karen and I to come to the group as a whole to see if anybody has any other suggestions, start coming to us with some ideas. She also mentioned that they're going to start developing like a forward facing type of website where should there be some type of situation like this to happen, that there would be also a QR code or some type of link that they could push out via social media, where then family and friends could just scan that QR code. That's kind of the wave of the future right now. Everything is QR code based, where they could then go to that, where, would send them straight to that website, where they could then hopefully be reunified with family and friends. So I thought that was a pretty interesting idea. She said all of this came about due to, they did an exercise in June and they called it a target of readiness regarding a plane going down in Tempe Town Lake. And after they did this big, large mass casualty exercise, this was one of the biggest after action report items where they saw was one of the biggest issues that was extremely weak. So I think just us as a whole, with all of us PSAP managers coming together, because we know if something's going to happen, then it's probably not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, that we need to come together as a region, as a whole, to see how are we going to help each other as PSAPs. And I think, again, NG 911 is probably going to be a big factor with this, again, with call routing. So I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions on this. I think there's going to be more to come when Karen and I have further meetings with Andrea in the next couple of weeks. But again, this was just very beginning preliminary conversations on this.
Hey, Brittany, You might remember when you were with DPS, we had a website called EM Resource.
What was it called?
EM Resource through the Department of Health Services that already has all the hospitals on there statewide. And they use that to communicate their statuses as far as, you know, what kind of patients input they're getting and whether they can accept more patients. There might be a way to maybe expand on that website,
Okay.
maybe interlink some of the law enforcement agencies to it. DPS already has access because of the helicopters that we man, and we're required to keep their statuses updated there as far as their availability. But there's a website already kind of in line with what you're talking about that we might be able to just expand on it to include patient and I don't know about fatalities, but perhaps we could incorporate something there with the OMEs as well. But the website's there. It's operated by DHS, which is the state health department already. And so they might be an excellent resource for that, to be a center point for something like that.
Great idea. I'll make note of that. You got me.
I have a question, Karen. Did you say that they are going to offer like and broadcast it like a number for people to call that's looking for somebody that?
Yeah, that was one of the things they were talking about, was manning a phone bank type thing. And having already a list of people that would be able to report to that phone bank, and then us directing folks to that phone bank via social media, possibly transferring ourselves, giving out phone numbers, that kind of thing.
So in that, will there be a special 10-digit number, or are you going to advertise for them to call 911?
They were going to put out a special 10-digit number that we would all put out on our social media for them to call,
Okay.
to try to avoid the calls into 911.
Yeah. So I'm just curious on policy routing, what you're wanting to do there.
Well, the policy routing is for the event itself, right? So when the incident happens, we're going to get flooded. That
Right.
there's where the policy routing comes in, to try to control the chaos by directing the calls to certain agencies in an order where they can give us a hand, where they're aware of the incident, those types of things.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I had a couple of things. One, I'd be curious to see what the school districts do, because they have plans in place for reunification if they have an incident at their schools. So what are they using? How effective is it? Can we learn from that? Aside from the 10-digit number, I would suggest them also offering the text option for people to text in the information, what they're looking for or who's missing, and or even leveraging the programs that they use now where they can submit, let's say I'm missing my brother, I can submit the name, descriptors and such. And if something were to hit on that, then they would get notified via text and follow up with a phone call to help manage. If it's that massive an incident, there's going to be hundreds or thousands of people. They've got to be able to manage that volume.
Kim or anybody, was there not, I'm just remembering because my brother lives in Las Vegas, when they had that shooting, that mass shooting at the concert a few years back, a lot of people checked in on something to say that they were okay. Some sort of social media thing. Will you factor that in, that somebody's kind of monitoring that as well? So they can see that who's checked in and who's okay. That would be something else you might want to consider.
A quick suggestion, maybe if we checked with other states that have these events all the time, like maybe our Florida partners that have hurricanes like multiple times a year, that certainly have to track that. My recollection is a lot of time they have the Red Cross set something like that up, both website, texting, and phone. And they set up a national number that they put out all over the country for people to call in. Maybe we're trying to recreate something that already exists. And it seems to me the Red Cross is almost always going to be the first place most people are going to go, because they're going to provide shelter for people that are in need. They're very good at tracking things like this already. So we might just partner up with them. And between that and the other website I mentioned, we may already have everything we need to just get it done and not have to put a lot of work into this.
Yeah, they seemed like they were, the fire departments are pretty far into this. They weren't really asking our help for this. They were really more focused on what could we do when one PSAP gets inundated with calls, and that directed us back in that direction of policy routing.
Yeah, again, we might check with our partners in Florida then, because they certainly have to deal with those calls both at the city, county and state level. So they've got something in place, might be something we can just copy rather than try to recreate.
There's also City of Houston during Harvey,
Hmm.
where this wasn't just a breakdown of mass casualty, it was a breakdown of telecommunications, and the 911 system itself was due to the fact that there was not enough redundancy within the areas that were affected by a very large incident. So I've spoken to some folks from Houston that have a lot of lessons learned and great feedback about making sure that there's sufficient resiliency and additional systems available when 911 is actually part of the disaster.
Anything else?
This is Rain from Phoenix Fire. Just wanted to share a couple of things with regard to this agenda item. I've been working with Andrea a little bit on this project, and one of our concerns is that would affect your guys' comm centers is the inundation of calls, and you guys have addressed this idea of giving those callers somewhere to redirect when they're calling in looking for their loved ones, etc. So that's a big part of this reunification. The other part of this is the early notification system. So someone mentioned EM resource, and the M system is used daily in our shops, both in Mesa and Phoenix, secondary PSAPs. We use it routinely with the hospitals. So our job, what we were trying to do is ensure that that system works, that we can provide a notification system to emergency managers so that they can manage these situations and take that load off of the primary and secondary PSAPs. So that's kind of the large lift. The M system, it used to have some database capabilities. My understanding is that is no longer supported and was pulled off the system. So they didn't have the ability to use that database portion. So just want to throw that on the table as some added information. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Gray. Okay, we'll go ahead and move to agenda item number 8. The next item is a discussion on the upcoming Arizona Super Bowl and contingency plans for emergencies. Vice Chair Sutherland will lead this discussion.
I'm afraid it's going to sound a little bit more like the same. We need to, probably both sides of the valley need to work out some way for the calls to quickly get somewhere else and to the right places, right? Right now, if we don't put a plan into place, if say Scottsdale has something happen at the waste management, or say Glendale has something happen over in Westgate area, immediately, not only are those agencies going to get overwhelmed, but then the calls start bouncing, right? So it's going to go to MCSO, it's going to go to our neighbors. That could happen anyway. If it's large enough that it inundates all of us, then we probably will just end up with a lot of bouncing anyway. But what we're thinking that we really need to do is consider our resources and train our folks so that we can take what we actually have available to us, get information to dispatchers in the nearby agencies as quickly as possible, so that while we're busy trying to get staff into our centers, that the other agencies aren't busy transferring calls right back into the phone system that's being rotated around the valley. So I'm willing to work together. We put, and I'll bring you in on the proposal that we did have. Whether or not we have NG 911 and policy routing available to us, some of the operational things I think need to happen anyway. And that's a fast notification. And then the other agencies knowing what to do when they get that fast notification. We'll utilize the signs that are on the RMAP that you have. We'll probably utilize the PSAP channel to get things out to everybody in a hurry. but it's going to be on the receiving end at that point. If your dispatchers hear this and they say, oh, Scottsdale's got something going on, but it doesn't trigger them to stop transferring into the bucket, then we're still in the same situation. So that's something that we really need to get out to each other so that we can have those conversations with our staff and know what our plan is going to be if something big happened. Because even if you're going along, you know, without any real Super Bowl events happening in your city, if we go down, like we're all in the same boat, right? Scottsdale can't sink without the rest of you guys paddling along with me. So I want to make sure that you're all prepared too.
In my office, they've developed my team give, I get a live update of how many calls are being served to all the PSAPs. And on one of them, it has a threshold color. And I believe that's set by us, that we determine that threshold, right? So in what you're describing, Karen, you think it would help is if we had a different tab on the RMAP, that if I get a strange call that I'm like, well, I wonder why I got this call. Like Gilbert had a huge fire last week. If they get a call, maybe part of that process, they look at the tab and then they'd be able to see the PSAP in red saying, oh, they're overwhelmed on calls. This is why I'm getting this call. Some sort of cue that they can look at and say, is this a misroute and this call for whatever reason got routed to us, or is it routed to me because that PSAP's being overwhelmed in calls right now?
Maybe, is there a way do we have the technology that we have right now with the heads up displays that are in our agencies? Would there be any way that you could remotely send messages there where it would be up in front of the room?
You would have to have it's a whole different system. So to be able to communicate with everyone, you'd have to have an R map, as it were, without the map, and you could have that up there.
I'm looking at ways to make it a little bit more prominent, right?
So
And
the information, but in a more prominent area.
something that I love the idea of having, you know, some type of jurisdictional view available in all of the PSAPs, where if something exploded, you know, it would be a massive red, even in, say, Scottsdale or, you know, whatever agencies involved, so that any PSAP, if you start getting, the dispatchers got phone calls and they can see they're getting Scottsdale phone calls and they look on the map and there's this enormous ball of red in Scottsdale, like they would know at that point, oh, okay, this is what's
Don't go to
happening.
Scottsdale.
Yeah, I'm not heading through that town right now.
Liz,
but
I think it would make a difference because what she's saying is exactly what happened during Westgate shooting. I remember you said I could tell something happened, but nobody else could. So Phoenix was still trying to transfer those calls back when they got inundated as well.
Chandler as well.
And
Remember
so-
shooting they had
So
live.
they're shooting as well. So I mean, if we could see that, what we call a red ball of the whatever goes on. And I think that's really good to have that extra map to show kind of that activity, because then we would actually know if there is something else going on in the valley. Especially with that event, that huge event going on between the two. Yeah, our intelligence officers can only tell us so much, but they get so inundated. I know when we had, you know, the threat of the shooter at at one of the Super Bowl, nobody knew. We did. We were running around like crazy, you know, in the back doing all that. But I mean, if it would have went down, nobody else would have really known about it.
I think that's something that we can look at to see if we can get yet a Q display, a heads up display with the PSAPs. That
With
is
a
in there,
jurisdictional
right,
view.
That looks at it. Mike.
This is maybe a little off the wall, but I know a lot of PSAPs have video distribution in the PSAPs. Sometimes I go on sites and you see that they've got CNN or some kind of current events display. If any PSAP currently right now has Apple TV, we haven't tested it on Amazon Fire Stick, but I believe that it is supposed to work there. We could provide in very short order, like probably, by the middle to end of next week, some visibility into all PSAPs. This is something that we're working on, and actually the same platform working on for ticket review as well. Tablets, the phone display is difficult because there's just too many PSAPs, and the amount of activity. It's not fun to try to scroll through to see what's going on the phone display. The tablet's workable, and an Apple TV or possibly Fire Stick is definitely something that we can support. It's just now emerging, but for a tactical item for you folks in the Super Bowl areas, that may be something we could look at trying to deploy, basically in the immediate, to see if that is some decent visibility for you.
I mean, Apple TV is certainly affordable. I mean, even, nobody even really needs to budget for that. What is it? I'm not sure, $10-14 a month at the high side.
Well, you don't have to subscribe to an Apple TV service. You just have to have the Apple TV puck, if you will.
So
the device that hooks up.
Streaming device.
So that can't be.
It's less than $200, I believe.
Okay.
Could we, in the interim, before we started doing on the displays, at least for the PSAPs that identify that are busy in Super Bowl, Scottsdale, Glendale, Phoenix, to have just makeshift, like what's in my office with a monitor, just so that they can have that in there until we get it finalized in something big, like a temporary at a supervisor's console, put it in there so that they can see immediately the PSAP status.
But we would call it like a test. We do, we're testing radios during this, we're doing testing during Fiesta Bowl as well. So we're testing radios during this time to kind of see what they have the capability of doing, with tracking and that too. So it's something that would be very beneficial to see if it would work during that event as well, to kind of see what we're gonna see.
Okay.
Makes any sense.
We can take that back and explore it if you would like.
Please.
And the other thought is, now that Dave's back in the room, Dave, could we look at our tools that we have with RMAP, that if I'm a call taker and I'm on a call and I can look at RMAP and something tells me that this was, it has a different routing because of a problem at the PSAP, whether they're over, dizzied out or something. Can we look into that?
Certainly, they're pretty much however we want it presented, whether it's, numbers and call volume or simply shading the city red. Any variation we can enable, and just whatever makes sense for the PSAPs.
Well, I'm also looking at if a single call. So I'm sitting in Phoenix and I get a call for Gilbert. Would there be any breadcrumbs or clue when I look up, when I hear Gilbert, and then I look at my map and I can tell that this call was intentionally routed for whatever reason? I don't know we don't have the luxury of knowing why it was rerouted, but that the call was specifically rerouted because of an overwhelming issue, make busy issue, something like that. I think that's something we could go explore, because it's good to have that up there. But if I'm the individual operator, it's also good if I have a clue that I'm looking at my map and, oh, well, this is why I've got this. So I'm not going to transfer it. I'm going to whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I believe we've got all the routing and transfer information. So we just need to be able to display that in a way that makes sense to the PSAPs.
Yep. Would you guys be interested in that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we see in Rapid SOS. You can see when we've gotten a couple calls from Mesa, why, I don't know. And it just depends on what cell site they hit.
Yeah, but this one would let you know
Let
it's
us
not
know,
a misroute,
right.
it's not a border one.
Right.
But this was transferred because there's a problem at that piece.
There's more activity going on than should be.
So I have a question. About a year ago, I think it was a year ago or more, we actually had the opportunity to turn on the map to see other calls in other jurisdictions. I had it installed at the supervisor console, and I myself, when I sit there, have turned it on and I'm able to see the calls that other agencies are receiving. So that's already available. If you have your supervisors passively monitoring that and they see a cluster pop up in Scottsdale, that's an indication, don't transfer the call back there. They're inundated. You see that cluster is very visible, just like the Rapid SOS. The only other thing I was thinking as you were talking, Karen, is this is a very specific events that are happening in a specified time frame. So we know it's coming. We know something is coming. As a region, why is there a reason why we can't say, hey, during this time period, X date to X date, it's almost like a blackout period. If you receive a call from another agency that seems not normal, don't transfer it back. Chances are something's going on. And I have personally already started conversation with my staff about these contingency plans that we started discussing. If another agency needs to transfer their calls, they're going to raise us and let us know. So I think we need to hit that for all the managers, is have that conversation now. The clock is ticking. Let them know, put it on the radar so that it's in the back of the head. They can anticipate this.
And also, because I listened to many of these calls to confirm that it was like you had in Gilbert on Saturday, the fire that was high visibility and that set off alarms. Our tech team waited for it to subside and then called to verify that everything was all clear, if you will, in Gilbert. But what I frequently get when I review those calls, I hear the audio and it's an incident that's a high visibility incident, a large fire or gunfire. On an incident like that, that would, I think, be very beneficial. This is me, a tech guy, trying to convey this back to operations, that on a specific type of incident like that, where the call taker would theoretically be able to recognize that this is a high visibility incident, that the training would be to go to the protocol to take that information instead of trying to transfer it back. Because when it does transfer back, what Karen mentioned, the bouncing, it doesn't get a busy signal when it tries to go back to Scottsdale. It bounces again and frequently ends up right back at another call taker at your PSAP, the alternate PSAP. So now you have two people involved in a call that, and I do have the tablet version if anyone would like to see. We'd have to generate a bunch of calls to see the thresholds work, but you can see in real time as the calls roll into your sites.
I have a quick question for DPS. Is this something we'd be able to integrate into as well to know when something like that is happening? And then a question about the Rapid SOS or Rapid Deploy. Doesn't it already alert us when there's a big dump of 911 calls coming into a specific area already? And would it just be a matter of making sure we can share that info with each other? Because unfortunately, DPS is in a position of being kind of close to just about everything where anything might go wrong. And we would certainly like to know about those things pretty quick if we have that option.
From a technical perspective, you're currently not on our list of PSAP since you moved out. But I know a lot of the calls that you get, obviously you get about 300 or 400 from our region. I see those counts every day. We are able to see your calls get transferred out of our region. So we would be able to add you as a tile here to keep track of the number of calls that we are aware of that are transferred to you. And then as far as this Apple TV or possibly a Fire Stick interface, yeah, that would not be an issue working with you guys as a partner. Your IT group would have to open up, it would require internet access, but that device wouldn't be managed by our team. We would do some onboarding with you. It involves a QR code. We're estimating right now would be less than 15 minutes worth of onboarding, and then just your AV type technical folks on your end, connecting it up to your video distribution, wherever you want that display to be displayed at your PSAP, or possibly in the EOC. And it is a secure item. It's not it's encrypted all the way. There's no way for any other parties, unless you're onboarded by our staff, to be able to subvert or look into it.
Mike, is there an advantage to one over the other? Apple TV, Fire Stick, do they work with different brands or anything better that, like, would you say, okay, one is a little bit more universal than another?
The advantage right now with the Apple TV is I know that it works. We haven't tested with the other product line. And again, for a couple $100 and the almost immediate visibility that your folks would have into this.
Is what Kim has, is it available in all the PSAPs right now, or do we have accessibility to that? Because I don't recall. Do you recall seeing that? I don't recall seeing that. Do we all have accessibility to that? Because I've never seen it.
It was, you had to send MR911 a request to add that view, so to speak, on that specific
Understand that.
computer.
We should, that's something, if it's something, a tool that should be used, I mean, it's something that should be available to us right away. It's kind of interesting on that.
I think what she's referring to, it's simply the overview of the valley map. And you guys, anybody can pull it up from any of your positions by just putting in the URL. So you've got your fixed URL that's associated with your PSAP that's going to pull up your calls immediately. But I can certainly distribute the generic Valley View call that's available to anybody that wants to use it.
So just to clarify, I can, whatever that view is, I can see calls that are popping up at the other PSAPs.
Correct.
All right.
So do we need to request it, or are you just gonna go ahead and send it out?
No, I will send the URL out to all the PSAP managers.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the membership? Okay, we'll move to agenda item number 9. This is a report from the Arizona 911 office on statewide activities. And they are unfortunately not present today. So we will move on to agenda item number 10. The next item will be a report from the MR 911 technical team, and Mike Benjamin, the 911 technical manager, will provide this report.
Okay, I'll probably keep it pretty short here. Most of the focus over the last, since the last meeting has been on the rollout of the next gen core services into our region. A ton of work has been done on that. A lot of this is leading us up to being able to retire legacy equipment and retire some legacy providers. Some of that has occurred already, as Liz mentioned in one of the budget slides, that some of the costs associated with that legacy equipment or legacy service is going away. Your calls have been moved over to IP on the ingress. So we receive the calls from a Comtech partner currently via IP. These are right now for the wireless and voice over IP calls, which have added up now to, it's up to about 95%. There may be some variation per PSAP of your wireless versus your old school wireline type traffic, but I can tell you from a region-wide perspective, there's less than 600 calls a day that are coming through the legacy systems, and those calls are getting ready to be absorbed into the platform that's been stood up for the next gen core services. We expect later this month that Comtech will have absorbed the Lumen and Cox and other small legacy telecom providers. So all of our calls then, those additional 600 calls out of the about 7,000 or 8,000 that we receive a day, those will be coming in through this next gen platform. A lot of talk about next gen. I mentioned the calls are coming in on IP, but how they get to your PSAP has not changed. We're still using our IP selective router right now. We have its successor stood up, and we're starting to do some test calls on that. We received the first test call last Friday on December 2nd from Comtech to be able to test the new platform coming in. But right now the vendors are not ready for full-blown next gen core services all the way through, all the way into your PSAPs, all the way down into your CAD spills and everything else. There was a little bit of talk earlier about Vesta 7.9. We were told early in the project that Vesta 7.9 is the panacea for Vesta, that will allow everything to be next gen core services all the way down to everything. But that's turned out that they've determined that that's not actually ready either. So the short story is that everything right now next gen is really on the precipice of being able to be released into your PSAPs, but everything that's changed to date has not presented any new formatting to data or any new systems at your PSAP that would create any difference to your call takers. So the CAD spills and the mapping spills, the MIS, all of that, the variations in what will change in next gen 911 with some of the addressing info, none of that's really visible yet to your call takers. So though there has been a ton of work done getting things ready for these last steps, which in my estimation at this point could end up taking many months, maybe more than a year, when we start talking about, is everybody's system ready for what's called EIDO, the emergency information data objects, that the new CAD spills and everything else. Our hopes were kind of dashed when the Vesta 7.9 was announced that it's not actually even fully ready. So the good news is we're retiring product. We're getting rid of legacy providers. We had not just the Gilbert issue here with call routing type stuff over the weekend, but we've also had over the last few days ASU and Tempe, where their calls in the legacy network were being routed to their alternates because of we had some rain, right? And some of that legacy facility gets wet and ends up causing calls to misroute. That should be over here very quickly. We're so close that Liz has actually already submitted the letters telling them that we're canceling it. So Comtech knows they're on the short leash to make sure that that gets finished, because we won't be paying for that here really quickly. We're expecting it in just now a matter of days, not months. Let's see.
Mike, can I ask the question
Yes, ma'am.
about the Vesta 7.9? What was it? What was 7.9 supposed to do differently than 7.8? And you're saying that nobody has 7.9.
No, 7.9, we're still upgrading sites to 7.9. We recently, well, Tempe was deployed to 7.9, and we recently upgraded Glendale to 7.9. But what Motorola chose to do with the Vesta product was to not build in any of what's referred to as MCS, the MSAG conversion services. So you can go to full-blown next-gen core services and get the location information using the newest methods as far as next-gen core services, with the address delivered with the call versus having to query after the call was received at the PSAP. But the Vesta system will not be able to output that to downstream systems like your CAD spills or other systems that we use that we trigger the mapping, or to your MIS system and so forth. They won't be able to convert the new address format to be able to fit the legacy formatting. So
And
in
that's
order,
already in some of the valley agencies, did you say? And they can't format it to drop into CAD or NELE?
we don't have any.
Oh, we don't
true
have
next-
any here.
Right, yeah. So
Okay.
if it's been deployed in other parts of the state, either they have Solacom product, a different product, or they're using legacy features out of Vesta or Viper in order to maintain that. So to your call taker, it really doesn't change a lot. They still get the voice, they still get the addressing and the mapping, and it still gets stumped to call detail records and MIS. But there's a subtleness to it that it's not truly next gen 911 all the way down to the finer, more granular parts of the standard. So that has been what's been taking up the majority of my team's time. I'm going to turn it over here in a minute to Dave. Other items that we've been working on are, like I mentioned, the display in order to get some of our 911 data out securely, and some of that data that we've been focusing on after previous meeting is being able to get you something more modern and real time in terms of your ability to look at what open cases you have and look at the case histories without having to sift through emails for your case histories. And of course the real time or near real time, the display that's on the tablet here, if anyone wants to see it, it will lag roughly by about 5 seconds for what's going on.
I do have a question on your ticketing. Even now, I mean, it would make more sense if when we submit a ticket that it's not continually added on to other tickets. We were looking for one to see if we submitted for people to be added to the system. And I had to go back. It was attached to another ticket that had all the way back to June. So, I mean, we're having to feed through all those tickets to see, it's just continually added to one ticket. And yeah, it has another ticket number, but I mean, it's continually added to that one section. So you have to keep on going through all those tickets. Are they done with separate tickets? I mean, because when I refer to tickets with my unit now, that we do a fresh desk ticket where they have their own ticket number. Our IT department has their own ticket number. We can refer to that ticket number. And if it's closed out, it's closed out. It's done. That way we know. And if we go research it, we know this ticket number belongs to that request.
Okay, I can take a look with Corey and maybe have Corey call you to address that. With Vesta, the solution requires a lot of more technical machinations to just add users and everything, right? And some of the other systems, if you weren't ACD, you could add certain things. And if he's currently right now managing that by adding users based on previous tickets and just kind of lengthening out the life of that ticket, we can work on making it so that those are more atomic or compartmentalized so that you're able to find things in a more reasonable way.
Yeah, if it can just identify it by the ticket number, because that's what I was doing at first. And then I had to let Michael Ann know that when you're looking for those, you have to look for kind of like when you requested it. So, and it came through a string. So we were looking for some other tickets on some issues too. And it was kind of bulked all together. So I don't know, maybe we can go over it. I don't know. It's a little difficult finding some of the stuff that we submit.
Would you like us to talk to Michael Ann or both of you?
Both of us.
Okay.
Both of us, because we both go into the ticketing system to look.
All right, with that, I'll turn it over to Dave to talk about some of his mapping items.
Thank you. Last meeting, I had mentioned some of the beta projects that I'm working on with mapping calls with Z-axis. So we do Z-axis in our map right now from Rapid SOS that's in meters, height above ellipsoid, which is pretty much useful to nobody. But recently I was contacted by Ecopia, and they specialize in extruding 3D buildings and ground elevations and whatnot. And so we've got a pilot project going on right now with Ecopia that right now, the only area that they're giving me access to is just the downtown Phoenix area, kind of around I-10, I-17 corridor area, to bounce off of their services to get the height of a call above ground level. So instead of this kind of archaic information that we're getting from Rapid SOS, we pass that to their services to get the above ground level elevation of a call. So that's a test pilot project that we had to work through lawyers to get an NDA set up so that we could work together on that. But we're testing that service out right now and trying to move forward with being able to map calls with confidence in the 3D environment.
Okay, if no questions for Dave, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Mike, I have a general technical question, if you don't mind entertaining. I want to talk about or ask about troubles that we're having and escalation. And so I'll give you two examples. Our RMAP position mapping, at least several times a month, we're reaching out and creating a ticket because one of our workstations is losing its position mapping. Another example would be POT server alarms. At least several times a month, we're getting alarms and tickets are being created. And so I guess my question would be is when do these things get escalated beyond just logging in and resetting something or logging in and rebooting something? Because it's obvious that if something keeps failing or going wrong and we have to keep resetting or rebooting, there's a larger problem somewhere beyond that. And so I wonder when does it get more than just a Band-Aid fix and do we actually fix the root cause?
So on the mapping item, I don't know what it is that is causing that issue. We haven't had enough, if you will, of a pattern to form for us to be able to say this is a direction for us to attack. But that is an area, we developed the map, we support that map, and it's an area that it will be on us to put together those patterns to resolve that. On the Viper specific items, we're in contact with the vendor to try to get fixes and support. We don't hound them a lot on items that don't provide a ton of impact to the PSAP that we're able to pet for a while until we try to find patterns that because we get dumped into the same type of thing that you may experience it with other product or vendors where we're looking for a solution to a very specific issue, and what they want is examples and help trying to sort out because they don't have the access to the systems that at the level where they can watch the systems constantly to try to sort things out. We do know on the Viper product that in order for them to scale out the way that they had built the product some years ago to try to make it so that you could scale to hundreds and hundreds of clients, they chose certain technologies that are difficult to manage. It appears that the customer base, the potential types of customers that they get are not going for the 700 clients in one system type setup. So they're changing some of their architecture to reduce some of the complexity. But when they do that, it'll reduce it down to where you'll have an upper limit on systems that would be more like 100 consoles per system. We're watching that carefully and we'll try to back that complexity down as soon as practical. We did a round of that a few years ago with them because prior to you moving to Viper 7, it had actually been Viper 7 had other issues. I don't know if Michelle or Stephanie would want to comment on some of that with the early Viper 7 issues.
I'm saying with mapping,
No, this wasn't a mapping. This
it's
was
the pot server alarm. Can I ask Jim, how does it manifest into your folks?
To my folks, I don't think it is at all.
Okay.
But
But
you
how-
know, it's
how
really
is-
just the tickets is how we're noticing them. So I guess my question is, I just want to make sure that when you guys are recognizing these reoccurring alarms or issues or problems, that we're not just going in and saying, okay, a reboot solved it this time, we're done. That there, you know, we recognize that while there's a root cause of whatever's causing those alarms and failures, so let's try and look at fixing or correcting that.
Okay.
Because in the tickets, all I see in the tickets is rebooted computer, now working fine, ticket closed. So, and while that works for now, I think it's better if we can find that underlying cause and fix it from happening at all.
But it's not anything that's coming across to on the PSAP side. where
Not on
they
those
have it-
server alarms, no.
And then on the positioning, when it loses its positioning, does the map stop working? Is that what
Correct,
it is?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, one example is impacting and they have to wait for someone to remote in and so forth. And the other one, what you don't see on the other side of the case management is that our team, right, it's self-serving for us to be able to get rid of those alarms and so on.
Right.
Rather than just pet them because they come in weekends, nights. They're not just the technician putting the case in, but his supervisor, as well as myself and all of our seniors, team members review cases and work as a team to try to sort out what we can. The patch churn that we are going through with Viper has slowed down a bit. So right now I don't see any patches coming out that might, you know, affect the type of ticket that you're talking about. But I can assure you, we continue to watch and try to find patterns and work with the vendor. Corey works with, he has standing meetings with Entrado, going through open cases and so forth, trying to sort out with them how we make sure their systems are working properly. But when a device reports that it goes down or has some type of failure or exceptional incident, but then comes back in within 2 seconds, we could just ignore that and not alarm on it. But our standpoint from our team is that we don't like to pat a bunch of those down because we don't want essentially to ignore it. I know from your vantage point, though, that may be the appearances that we're ignoring it. You know, the technician takes overtime for 15 minutes or a half hour to pet it, but that's not actually how our group operates. We are reviewing every single case update to try to be in front of as many or any issues that we can get in front of.
Thank you.
And this is Damala. I just want to weigh in as well so that Jim doesn't feel like he's kind of a lone ship over there. I know what he's talking about. I get some of these tickets, and that's the only way I even become aware that there was an alarm or there was something that's being looked at. But over time, what I've noticed is that some of these tickets are 6 months old, a year old, and it's just every 3 or 4 months we're getting a notice that the alarm went off again, or I had to reboot it, still monitoring it. 2 months later, it's seems to be working again. And then 3 weeks later, it's another addition from the tech that it's not working. And sometimes when these tickets come in, I don't even know what it references. I know it means something to you guys on your end. What I don't know is if it is impacting my team in some way. And so that's a challenge as well, because if I don't reach out to my tech and ask, or Corey, I don't even know what that impact is to my center.
Just to throw an idea out here and tell me if you think this would help in when you're looking at them, in the confusion that you get with them, is if in that 15 minutes that he's quieting the alarm, he can put in there PSAP not affected or something, that so that you can see that has to do with backroom alarm stuff and it's not anything specific to the PSAP, so that you don't have to say, okay, yeah, this is something with the backroom that they're dealing with.
We could make a call to the supervisor if if that would be.
I don't think that's
advantageous.
helpful because that doesn't always get relayed to me.
Yeah.
And I think that would be helpful to some of that, but I think that still doesn't really touch on Jim's concern about making sure that those items aren't just being sidelined and going on indefinitely, that there is some actual resolution
And-
occurring.
Right. And the reason I think that is because while the alarm itself isn't causing an impact, whatever the root cause of that alarm is, if not rectified or fixed down the line, may cause something else to go wrong, which then does cause an impact.
And those are the reasons that we constantly look and review the tickets on a lot of these items. Vesta is very famous for this. They have very hair trigger alarms, not so much in standalone installations, but if you have a geodiverse installation, the Vesta product was built to be a standalone product. And then they came up with a method to separate the A side and the B side. That they did not change timers and the how sensitive it is if there's any delays in any kind of networking or response. And they also don't give us guidance on changing what's called the quality of service at the IP level, the response time. So there are times in Vesta where the A side queries the B side to see if it's alive. It gets the response, but if it gets the response, and we're talking milliseconds late. So we've measured some of these items and recorded them, asked for additional guidance. Should we protect these queries that go back and forth so that they may go through the network a few milliseconds faster? Or should we ask that you bump up from, say, 200 milliseconds to 250 milliseconds so that you don't create an alarm for a response that's delayed by just a few milliseconds? So when it's not service impacting, it's really difficult for us to get the attention of the vendors to correct latent issues within their systems. If it is service impacting, we won't, you will be on the vendors until they get it corrected. Right now, we don't know what to tell them to correct other than, can you pad your alarms down? We've been told before well, that may be an alarm you just don't want to an alarm. You don't want to alarm on. That's not the view that we take. If it's generating an alarm, our team's going to try to do our best to address it.
Thank you.
But in the meantime, we'll keep pushing on them, but do you want some little verbiage in there so that when you see it, it's one of those?
I think that would provide some help. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions or comments from the membership? Okay. Proceeding to agenda item number 11. Are there any requests from members for an item on a future agenda? Okay. Agenda item number 12. Are there any comments or announcements from the membership?
I got a quick one and then Karen, I forwarded a nominations for an award by the NG 911 Institute. That if you can consider for your agencies, if there is a good nomination that you would like to submit to that. And it also includes, they call it a citizen in action, where you've had a call where the help of the person calling had a positive outcome. That's unique. Those are given in Washington, DC, in the end of February at 911 Goes to Washington. So that would be a good opportunity to highlight your agency, that affair.
I also have one announcement. The Arizona chapter of APCO NINA has announced that it's going to be sponsoring a statewide career fair for dispatchers on April 15th. Most of you are probably already aware of it. If there's anybody that is not, send them my way. We're having weekly meetings to plan this. It's going to take place in multiple areas around the state at the same time. And we're going to be working on advertising and digging deep into the plans pretty soon.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else? Okay. The next meeting of the PSAT Managers Group will be on Thursday, February 9th